And with that, I'll just say welcome again, everybody, to the Food Bank Tableau user group. This is part two of our meetings. The last one we had, part one, was back in November, and it featured Andy Cotgreave, who presented on what the heck is a. So the idea for this series, I guess, was basically how to get people to use our dashboards that we build. We spend a lot of time and effort building them, and we want them to be used. So hopefully Andy's presentation, if you were able to join that, hopefully that kind of set a framework or laid the ground for what is a dashboard. Now, did he directly answer that? I don't know. I'll get to that in just a minute. So today we'll just kind of have a open call for comments or questions about his presentation, and then we'll get into today's topic, which is really going to be just some practical tips on things you can do within Tableau to hopefully help get your end users to use the dashboards that you create. So really quickly about us, I'm Caleb with Feeding the Gulf Coast in Alabama, and our co-host for the Food Bank Tableau user group is Tammy Jackson in Augusta, Georgia at Golden Harvest Food Bank. You can reach out to either of us anytime if you have questions or whatever about the group. If this is your first time, just a quick about us. We meet quarterly online just to share knowledge, best practices, talk about use cases for Tableau at our organizations. We have a dedicated Slack community to use to stay in touch between meetings, or just talk about maybe problems you're trying to solve, or again, share use cases. If you found a cool trick, a cool workaround, a really cool calculation you like, please share that in the Slack. There's lots of channels in there, so just find one that it fits in, and feel free to just engage with other users. If you scan that QR code, it should let you into the Slack group. And again, if you want to be more involved, please reach out to myself or Tammy, and you can send a message in Slack or email us. I would love to have our community of Tableau users that food banks present. And again, it can be anything, tips, how-tos, interesting use cases, or even if you want to like present a problem you're trying to solve, like I can't figure out how to do this. We would love that, and maybe get all of us involved, and we can hopefully help you out there. So again, just reach out if that's interests you. So like I said, I want to take a little time to open up the floor to anyone who has comments on Andy's presentation. I thought he did a really great job. Andy's well known in the Tableau community, the data world. So while you gather your thoughts, I think I'll share just some of my takeaway from his presentation, and then hopefully we'll get a few folks to chime in the chat or come off mute. It seems really like, what is a dashboard? We define that really it's dependent on what our end users need. So that may change over time or from project to project. If you're just take an example of a CEO, what your CEO wants in a dashboard may be very different than what my CEO wants in a dashboard. So it just depends on who is going to be using it and what their purpose is. He showed some examples, like a very simple text-based KPI message that was sent through Slack, and he proposed the question, is this a dashboard? Some people said, yeah. Some people said, no. For the manager or director who gets those messages, maybe it is a dashboard to them, but for a data analyst like you, or somebody that needs to dive deeper into why the numbers are the way they are, they probably wouldn't consider that a dashboard. So again, it's really dependent on who's using it and what they're using it for. I think that's what makes our job not frustrating, but fun, right? So we get to build all kinds of unique things for different use cases. And I think a theme that hopefully is going to be, you'll hear a lot today, is communication. So to really get to the bottom of what your users need takes communication and meetings and listening. So you'll hear that a lot today. But I would love for anyone to come off mute, or put in the comments section any thoughts you had on Andy's presentation if you were there. I did send the link out earlier, and just in case somebody needed to watch it, and I can send it out again too. It's in the Slack channel, but we can absolutely send that. So I'll just give a couple of minutes if anybody has any comments.
One of the things that I really loved about um, the presentation, I mean, I enjoyed the whole thing and I learned a lot, but that book that he showed from 19 whatever, the first one on data visualization, it just resonates with me, like the more things change, the more things they say stay the same. And when you were talking about communication, I mean, it always comes back to communicating. No matter the fancy tools or equipment or things like that, it's always going back to communicating, and it always comes back to being customer focused and finding who your customers are and finding out their needs, which is hard for me because I want to prepare dashboards for myself and things that I think are cool and easy to use, and I always have to, um, you know, when I go off track, I need to go back and focus on the customer.
I love that. I'm so glad I'm not alone in that. When I first started building my first dashboard, that was my kind of mindset, was I'm going to build something I think is cool. And then it took more time than I would like to admit to realize none of these things I think are interesting and cool are being used, or they're causing confusion. So that's when really it took me, I had to get with the end users and say, hey, I'll be honest with you, a lot of these things I know are not being used. They're things I think are interesting, but they may not be interesting or useful for you. So, well said. Yeah, it takes communication to get that information. So,
Kelly,
And Rick,
one thing we're go ahead.
no,
you're
go
good.
ahead, Arnett.
I was about to say that this is the key, like the communication with your end users, because what you're describing is what I go through every day. But the one thing that I've used for a long time, and I've always kind of put it as an afterthought, but it was just recently reiterated from somebody else. I'm like, see, oh, I wasn't crazy. But it's the 5 whys, or the why behind the why questions, because I just did something like 2 days ago when somebody put a ticket. They said we need a report for this, and I created a report. Unfortunately, I don't use Tableau anymore, but same concept. I created one report, and I was able to take the report and then put it in widgets in a dashboard that showed the different parts of the reports, but condensed in a way that I was understanding the request. And people thought it was amazing. So the point that I think one of the point Andy made is not just what is really a dashboard, it's how you present it, it's how it's used. And then the comment you made earlier about the delivery through Slack or text message or whatever, I think people sometimes forget the extra features you can get from a Tableau dashboard. Is you can get subscriptions, you can get notifications, and all of this is complementing the actual need. And I think what you describe is true. It's like you have to really understand the need and how people are going to use the report, because sometimes you can improve the report to get them to avoid the manual step people like to do, right? Like everybody has created a dashboard when people just download and then in Excel and then do their own cooking, and then they come out with another KPI. It's like, we can do the KPI directly for you if you tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, that's really well said. It takes more than one meeting too, I'll say. I think, like you said, constant communication. So the first time I met with the end users, I got some feedback, like on what they wanted in a dashboard, but not as much as I was wanting or hoping. But that's just because sometimes it takes, like you just said, teaching them what is possible. Like, what, they don't know what they want because they don't know what's possible with Tableau. They don't know what type of vises are possible in these features. So sometimes you have to start there. And then once you teach, like, here's what we can do, now what do you want, you may get some good feedback that way. So Rachel, I did see your comment. I think that's really, really great. I'll try and follow up with that towards the end of the meeting. I think that's a really good point to make. So, and then, yes. All right, cool. So today, like I said, we're going to just kind of go through just a few what I would call problems, and then look at some suggestions to those problems. These are just fairly simple, but very useful things you can do, practical things in Tableau that will hopefully encourage your end users to use your dashboards. So the first one is actually inspired by Tammy. This came up when I first met her and we started this group. My end users just want me to give them a report of the data instead of using the dashboard. So it's like, why did I build this if I'm just going to have to be the one to go in here and, tell them the information or screenshot it for them? So a couple of things to note if you're experiencing this is, again, one thing we just talked about, you need to understand the why. Like, why don't they want to engage with the dashboard you built? Are they having issues or frustrations logging into Tableau Cloud? Are they confused how to navigate Tableau Cloud once they're in? Like, where is the dashboard you made? Or are they simply unfamiliar with what a dashboard is and how to use it? What are these drop downs? What do they do when I click them? Am I going to mess something up? We'll talk about those things in a moment. But again, the second thing is you're going to need to meet with them to find this out. You can't just assume. Now, if you're like an introvert like me, you probably don't want to hear that, but I can tell you from my own experience, it's absolutely essential and it can be really, really helpful. It's an absolute must. So one of the solutions for this problem is to add a download button to your dashboard. This may feel a little passive aggressive, but don't worry, I won't tell. It's a great option and it'll save you time from having to go into your dashboard and just send them the number or taking a screenshot or whatever the issue is. This will kind of gently ease your end users into logging in, opening the dashboard, and clicking that download button. If you have parameters or filters on, you'll need to teach them what they do, how they affect the data, so that they can select what they want to see and then click that download button on the dashboard. I'll just show you like what this kind of looks like. On your dashboard in Tableau Desktop, there's the objects in the lower left, and one of those objects is a download button. Once you have it on your dashboard, you can configure it. You can name it whatever you want. The example I have here on mine is download report, very clear. And then you can, of course, format it with colors and everything like that to make it stand out. You can actually configure this to download the view as an image or PDF or PowerPoint. I've never tried that. I don't know what it looks like. I tend to do PDF. So this has been really helpful for us, especially on those, like maybe it's a dashboard that is just a static view and the data is just updated. They can just log in, click that, download, and have what they need. Tammy mentioned
I just have to chime in and say that
that's what I
think that's brilliant. I've never done that, but I am going to add that to my reports, especially the ones that I want them to download it to Excel.
And there's other ways to download that. I think, there's an option in the top right, one of the icons up there you can click and download. And to you and I, that may be intuitive, but to our end users, it may not be, who aren't used to navigating Tableau. So, yeah, any other thoughts or comments?
It's a good, the purists will say Tableau caved in and put writing that button capability in the dashboard, but To your point, yes, the download was existing for a very long time. I remember spending a lot of time having to send instructions for how to do the download properly. And especially there's like formatting issues on PDF side. The PowerPoint is a more recent addition, I think, and it was always weird what they actually, if I remember what they do, they just download series of images that you save in PowerPoint. So it's not like you get like fancy schemas or something you can re-edit, but it's basically addressing your user need, right? If people say, no, I really need to have a download, it's been a philosophical war. Like if you have a dashboard, you shouldn't have to download, but people do that because we're creature of habits, and that's what people do. So having that button is actually a very good way of saying, yeah, okay, if you really need it, just drag it, make it easy, and then now done.
Yep. Yeah. One use case we've had with this is a dashboard I built for our retail program. They can go into one of the retail stores, say one of the public stores that donates to us, and they could select that store and there's a dashboard I've built for every store, and they can download that and take it to the store. It's just a very handy thing to do, and it's a little easier, it's less technical than having, some sort of large enough tablet with Wi-Fi to go into the store and, oh, I forgot my Tableau login, just when they're at the office that morning, print it, and they can take it to the store and say, hey, this is your data. This is what you've been donating to us. This is how many meals you've provided for the community. So that helps the store managers of that program as well. So. Cool. All right, I mentioned this one just a moment ago. This is one I've come across just in my experience. Users are confused by Tableau Cloud. And what's our theme today? Communication. It's really important. So the only solution here, you're just going to have to teach them. But there are a few tips that I've learned to do this that hopefully will help. This is kind of the gateway into another topic of creating and cultivating a data culture within your organization. That could be an entire Tableau user group meeting in itself, maybe later this year. But a few tips to help you do this, and maybe even yourself as well, navigate Tableau Cloud a little easier. So if you're not familiar, Tableau Cloud is essentially a cloud-based server where your dashboards that you build are published, and then your end users have a viewer license to access those. The first thing may seem very obvious, but it's something I run into a lot, and that would be to have them bookmark the URL for Tableau Cloud. It's not typically a very memorable URL, so bookmarking it in the browser of choice really helps a lot and is going to save you, time and save them time so that you don't have to constantly send that to them. You can even add it as like an icon on their desktop or something if you really want to make it even easier for them to access. My number one tip for end users and myself who access the dashboards on a daily basis that are published is really simple, but is the favorite feature. I think this is underutilized in my experience. It has been. So there's two different ways you can do this on the dashboard. So let's say your dashboard or your workbook, as Tableau calls it, has multiple views or tabs. In this example here, you can star it, which will add it to your favorites. This makes it much easier to find. So once you log in on that left side menu, you'll see the favorites. Click that and all your favorites are right there. So if your server looks like ours and there's lots and lots of dashboards that don't need to be there and you haven't cleaned it up yet, this helps. Even if your server is really clean, this still helps to just have those with quick access. Now, in this example, this distribution analysis, so this is a workbook that's published, and within it are 5 different views. Now, someone, like myself, I just have the workbook favorited. So when I click that, it takes me to this view that you see here, or then I can choose which of these 5 I want to see. but one of your end users may only want one or two of these. So you can favorite these instead of the entire thing. And that will, again, just be much quicker. So, maybe your AR team only wants the map or something, as an example. They can just star that and have quick access to that. Again, it's a very simple thing to do, is to favorite it, but in my experience, I find that it's been underutilized. So I always recommend that. Any thoughts or comments on that?
I do. I'm going to share something that it's been effective for us as kind of an alternative to using the cloud directly. Is we use SharePoint. We've developed like an intranet site, but then we also create a page for like analytics, where then the link that's in the cloud will put that in SharePoint, and so our users will just go to SharePoint and click on it, and then it will take them directly to that specific dashboard. So they're in the Tableau cloud, but not having to kind of, figure out where to go or do all that. It just kind of takes them directly there. And that has been very effective for us to use.
I love that. Thank you. That's a great idea. Yeah, building home pages like that are also a great idea.
Yeah, this is a great idea. The challenge becomes when you have too much stuff, because then you have to rely on your own organization on the home page side. Like, you're basically going to say, okay, the same structure that you could have in your folders in Tableau, you want to basically link people to specific reports. Then now you basically have to manage that yourself, which, not everybody may have the ability to do that on a more advanced navigational website to organize people, because the challenge is definitely discoverability once you know where to go. So
agreed. Yep. So here's another one that has come up before, is, as you're meeting with end users, you will find that, 3 people want 6 different views. They may want different views of the same data, or they may want, entirely different ways to look at it, but not have a new dashboard to navigate to, or things like that. So one possible solution to this is utilizing a feature in Tableau called dynamic zone visibility. This is a relatively new-ish feature. I believe it came out a little while ago. Before, there was a workaround for this, commonly referred to as sheet swapping, where you could change out sheets on a dashboard and not have it take up any more space. So dynamic zone visibility does that, and it's quite a bit easier. So I'll just walk you through kind of the technical parts of this. Basically, you have one parameter that allows you to select multiple charts. So this is a parameter that, as you can see on the left, it's just a drop down, and it has 4 options for the end user to view. So there's a distribution bar chart, an agency table, distribution analysis, and food insecurity info is what these views are called. So they can select any of those and have it show on the dashboard, and I'll show what that looks like in just a moment. The dynamic zone visibility is also really powerful because it doesn't just apply to sheets that you put on your dashboard. It can also be used to control the visibility of other parameters, even filters and legends, which is also really helpful. So if one of your views, one of your sheets has a legend that you also need to show, you can include that and have it appear and disappear as the user selects or deselects the option. So once you, in your sheet, you'll build a parameter and you'll list, so that's on the left there. And then essentially you just create a calculation for each of those. So the select chart you see in the calculation on the top right is referring to the parameter that I created. and then equals, and in quotation marks, you have the exact name of the value there. There's probably several ways to do this. This is just the way I do it. Once you have that calculation, you'll use it as a filter. And if you do it correctly, it'll give you one option, and that's true. And you'll want to select true, which means when the parameter is selected to distribution bar, that's going to be true. We're going to show that. So once you have that on the dashboard, for the layout menu, there's an option for control visibility using. You'll select that, and then it'll ask you what you want to use to control the visibility, and you'll select the option from the parameter that you created. Hopefully the GIF works here. This is just an example of what it looks like. So on the right, you see the parameters being selected, and the large view is changing out. So there's 4 different sheets, basically, 4 different ways to look at data in one space. So the user can just select and see what they want. Is anybody using this, or does this seem interesting?
I have used sheet swapping before, so but not dynamic visibility. I don't use Tableau anymore, but it's a very good way of customizing and then making it like, to avoid scrolling by adding too many reports in your dashboard, and you basically avoid that scrolling boredom and then keep focus people on the same visual area. So that's a really good way of doing this. So sheet swapping was very popular, and I think people really appreciate dynamic visibility because it just simplifies, as you said. It's now a more built-in way to do it in Tableau. So
yeah, and I think that's just kudos to Tableau. I mean, they listen to their users, and that's a great example where people were doing this sheet swapping, and then Tableau said, let's just make it native and make it a little easier. So, the question, is it, that's a lot of stuff on the dashboard that you just saw in the GIF. Is it too much? Some may say, yeah, that's too much data. But again, it really just depends on your end users and the use cases. This worked for my use case. In the meeting I had with a lot of our end users, they all wanted a lot of different things based on this data here, which is county distribution data. And so this was just a really simple and practical way to just have all of that data for those different people in one dashboard. So
I have a quick question, if that's okay.
Sure,
of course.
Yeah. So how, let's say you click through a bunch of exhibits in a chart, and then you use actions to make the changes in the subsequent worksheet. Would that be reflected with you flicking through the parameters and stuff?
Yes. So dashboard actions are certainly you can do a lot more with those. So you could, like you said, click something and have it even take you to a new sheet. That's also an option. I've done that with a couple of dashboards, and I like it. It can be a little tricky to get it to do exactly what you want, especially if you're trying to also change some other parameters or filters. But also that will take some training, because I think most people, they're not going to just intuitively think they can click a bar chart to have it do something. So you would have to train them, hey, if you click the bar on the bar chart, it'll do this and that. So yeah, but dashboard actions, I think, are a step beyond this. They can do some really powerful things. Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to see if anybody, sometime, if anybody has dashboard actions that they're using. Would love to see that in Slack, how you're using it, what you're using them for.
Quick comment on what you said about the how people use it, I found in the past that it's either, depending on how people consume the data, you can do sheet swapping or dynamic visibility, or when storyboarding was introduced, it became a little bit more natural to people, because in a meeting, if you understand the workflow, we want to see at the table first, and we're going to see the chart, and we're going to see the regional distribution or whatever the different charts shows. Then some people are more used to see one thing after the other, and then dashboarding was allowed. I'm sorry, storyboard was allowing you to do that. I mean, I call it PowerPoint in Tableau before, they started to export to PowerPoint and ruin that that analogy. But because it's a really easy way to take, each of the sheet of the storyboard is basically a component. It's a single component, but it's a component, like a dashboard component, so to speak. So you can take a report and put it into a sheet, put some annotation and stuff, and then move on to the next thing, and then you can slide through it. So that's another way people can communicate their multi-area information if they don't want to use either dashboard action or dynamic zone visibility.
Yep, good point. Yeah, the story layout as opposed to a standard dashboard, an interesting use case as well.
And I'm going to show, if you come back to the couple of slides when you're actually building your parameter, when you had the fix option, right there. So you selected allowable values fix. One of my favorite tip when I try to use a parameter is the ability that you have, it came later, but when you open the workbook, you can actually add values from another field. So instead of having to type your table of values with whatever, if you have a field that represents exactly the different values of your, like for a typical example would be sales region, instead of having to go type, west, midwest, southwest, whatever, you can just pull all the values from so it's a dynamic lookup of the values, and it will use that into the table. And it's a really cool trick when you have long list of stuff. Another one would be if you have a state pulled down, then the parameter could become your state, and you don't have to type the 50 plus values that you need in there. So
yes, I love that tip too, especially counties. So our food bank serves 24 counties. I don't remember having to type them all.
Here we go. Imagine it's 24 zip codes.
Usually I will manually type all the list, and then I'll remember that you can add that from so that would have been.
But it only works if you have the field. That sometimes you say, oh, I wish I had a field that gave me those values.
Yeah.
So
in this case, there's not. Obviously, this is a custom a custom list I'm making. But yeah, great. That's a really great tip. There's also so you can see in this example while we're here, the value and then display as. I've heard that if you put value, if you do it like numbers instead of the string text, that it'll increase the speed, like it won't lag. I don't know if that's true or not. I think it might be if you have like a lot of parameters. So like instead of distribution bar as value, it would just be 1 and then display as distribution bar. I think that's the way you would do that. Anyway, just something interesting. I have not had experience with only like 4 or 5 parameter options. I've not had noticed a major lag in the performance of it. So cool. Good stuff. All right. So next problem, my end users don't know how to use the dashboard. So this is maybe something we've all probably encountered, and you can probably guess how to solve this. You just got to teach them. You got to meet with them. Like I mentioned, for those parameters, like maybe that's not intuitive. Even though it says select chart, it could be that they're not sure what is going to happen, so they don't even want to click it. And if they do click it, well, how do we get back to what I just saw? So meeting with them, teaching them is really the only way to do that. There's some other, interesting things you can do to maybe help with this issue. So in the objects on your dashboard, there's a text object, which is you just drag that on and you can write whatever you want on there. I've done this with a couple of dashboards, and you can use that to just write instructions. So here's a use case. You could do a simple example. Maybe my end user doesn't know that these blue squares are navigation buttons. They probably do, hopefully, but maybe they don't. So I could add a text box there that just says, click the navigation buttons above to jump to those views or whatever. And you can actually, on that text box object, you can add a show and hide button. So they could click that little X and that box would go away. So just something you can do to, to teach them, especially if you add something new. If you add a new parameter that allows them to swap sheets or something, adding a little bright colored box could help with that. Speaking of navigation buttons, this may be an interesting debate on the way to do this, but that's another object you can drag to your dashboard. This is something I use heavily. All of my views within the workbook, the dashboard, I put a button that allows them to click and it'll navigate to that. There's two ways you can navigate to a new sheet within a workbook, right? So you can use this button like I just mentioned. But there's also the tabs at the top, right? You've all seen that. So on that bottom image, you can see the tabs. Those are those 5 views. So by default, that publishes when you publish your workbook to Tableau Cloud. In my experience, and something I never expected, was this caused some confusion. Some of my end users, they weren't sure what the tabs were and what the difference was between that and the navigation buttons. So I just decided to eliminate all confusion. And when I publish now, in that top image, you can see the last option, or the first option there on the bottom is show sheets as tabs. So for me, in my use case, I just deselect. That way it just eliminates that option. And the only thing they're left with is the navigation buttons. Some people may disagree. It's a right or wrong way to do it. It just depends on who's using it and what their level of understanding of that is. So in this case, I have the same names, but maybe sometime you don't have the same name for the tab as you do the button. So that could also, add an extra layer of confusion. These buttons are obviously customizable, so you can, the color, the text and stuff like that, you can add whatever you want. Thoughts or comments on that?
This was something interesting because I'm totally opposite. Although I do agree that having both can confuse people. I don't use any navigation buttons. I only have tabs. And when I'm training people how to use my dashboard, I always try to equate it to this is just like an Excel workbook, because everybody I work with has at one time used an Excel workbook, so they understand tabs. And I just tell them, these tabs are at the top of the page instead of the bottom of the page. But when I was talking to Caleb with this earlier, I was laughing because we were total opposites on this. I know a lot of dashboards have the navigation buttons, but it seemed like for me it was simpler to tell people it was like Excel.
I don't use the navigation buttons either. I do the tabs at the top. So, but I think I'm going to start trying doing like maybe a hybrid model or going to this, because depending on the end user, I have some users that do like, it's almost like Excel, but I think when you have those links in there, it's almost like a cleaner version. Like it's only just one page, they don't realize maybe they're going to all these different tabs. You're just like linking to data. So it seems a bit cleaner that way. So I think I'm going to try and incorporate that in, on certain people that like, especially my high level, like, CEO type people that really don't want all the tabs. They just want to look at one sheet. But then, there's those others that really like to get into the, oh, I want to go here, here, here. So I like that you share that.
That's a great point. Yeah. Keep us updated on that. I'd be curious to see how that's received. Again, there's no right or wrong way. It just depends on the end user, what their level of understanding is. For me, the reason I went with the navigation buttons was my goal. And when I first started designing dashboards for us was to make it look like a website. So, Tammy's example was she wanted to make it look and feel like an Excel spreadsheet because everybody's familiar with that. That's great. And that's so true. The same can be said of websites. People are really familiar with websites these days, hopefully. So that was kind of my idea was I want to kind of mimic a website type, feel with most websites have navigation buttons. So I tried to make them, obvious and things like that. So yeah, cool. That's good stuff. So we had some other folks that mentioned some things about how to get people to use dashboards. This is from Tab. I think she's on the call now. So really appreciate her sharing some of this. Look at number one, work with end users to build dashboards. Yes, it is common advice, but I mean, in my experience, and I'll just be honest, I didn't do this early on. Again, I just kind of started building like, oh, this is so cool. Look at this, but it's not what they wanted or needed. So, and she says this may take several conversations and you may need to iterate on the dashboards a few times before finalizing a deliverable, but it's worth the time and effort. And I couldn't agree more. Having those meetings, again, you may not get all the feedback you want, but having those meetings consistently and regularly is really, really going to make a huge difference. So she also says to educate end users on what you can provide. Again, great point. They may not know what is possible in Tableau. She said what Tammy just said. People are used to Excel, which is a great tool, but Tableau much more dynamic. It's going to be able to do a lot more. There's interactivity involved. So showing them what is possible is going to help you get feedback from them about what they want. Walking through some of the different built-in functionality like parameters and filters is also important. So the more they understand the tool, the better prepared they will be to request new reports, new features, new views. I love that. This is another good one that honestly I always forget who. I want to be better about this. And this is taking inventory on which reports or dashboards people are using the most. So this can really give you insight into, is that cool dashboard, that cool map you just published actually being used? You can see the all-time views of any of your worksheets in Tableau Cloud. This is an example of one of ours. So just looking at this data, I don't know what that last one was. I should have gotten the whole screenshot, but I may look at that one and just ask like, this isn't getting as many views as our other ones. Why? Do you not like it? Is something wrong with it? Is it not useful anymore? So asking those questions is going to help in the long run. She mentions here too, as you get that feedback, maybe it needs some minor changes that could encourage users to interact with the dashboard again. It literally could just be something as simple as real world example here, adding a filter for city on a map that I built. I didn't have it on there and somebody needed it, and that took 5 minutes to do. So monitoring those views can be really helpful. Really quickly, I do want to open the floor for other comments and things, but some other things to think about. Formatting, dashboard sizing, number of items on your dashboard, like how much is too much. Communication, we talked about that, and transparency, we talked about that. This is just a really quick example I made on formatting. Formatting in Tableau, as much as I love Tableau, it can be really daunting and really tedious. There's some ways to do that quicker. You can copy formatting from one sheet and paste it to another, things like this. We can talk about that offline sometime if you're interested, but just things like changing your fonts, making them bold, larger, editing even the fonts, the typefaces on the axes, using your brand colors, removing grid lines and headers, making labels clear and easy to read, even removing the axis altogether if you have the number on top of the bar, like in this example. So on the left, you see there's no label on top, but there's the axis with the range. On the right, the axis is removed because we don't necessarily need it. Again, there's not a right and wrong way here. It's just, in my use case, this is what worked. It just makes it a little cleaner, easier to read. So dashboard sizing came up when I was talking with some folks. This is a huge debate in the community, so we're not going to dive too into it, but it is something to think about. There's so many different ways to size your dashboard, and it's important to know what devices your end users are using. Is this dashboard, which is for your AR team, are they all using the same 13-inch laptops? If so, you should design for that. If your CEO is using their iPad, his or her iPad to view, you're gonna have to rethink some things. Should you duplicate the dashboard and reformat it for various devices? These are questions you'll have to ask. The number of items on a dashboard, this was a huge talking point from Andy's presentation back in November. How much is too much? How many parameters? Should we have 13 different ways to look at the data? How many filters is too many? More things to think about. But to wrap it up, the biggest thing, communication, transparency. Keep in touch with your end users. It's going to help you know what improvements are going to be needed so that they can actually use it and get the information they want. One really quick practical thing I do is the information section of a published dashboard. Use that to your advantage. I use it to keep release notes, kind of like what apps on your phone do. If you see like an app needs to be updated, if you don't have automatic app updates enabled, there's release notes, right? So it'll be like version 10.2.3.7.8 or whatever, and it'll tell you what's been changed. Like, oh, we fixed this bug, or we add this feature, this. I keep release notes anytime I change a dashboard, even if I just update the data and nothing else changes, that goes in as a log. And I have a file and a software I use to do that. And then I just copy and paste that so that my end users can log in anytime and they can look at that info and see what's been changed. It's really helpful if you start changing colors and things like that, or if there's a new filter, a new drop down, like, whoa, what is this? They can just go there and be like, oh, okay, cool. I see the release note. I know how to do this now. So again, that's not intuitive. That's actually easy to look over. So that's one of those things you would show your end users how to find that. So cool. Questions, comments, ideas. I want to open the floor, and then we're going to have a swag giveaway. That's why you're all here, right?
I just want to say, go back to Rachel's, I think it was Rachel.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to call that out.
Rachel, who made the comment about, seeing what other food banks do and the good and the bad and the ugly. I'd love to see, I don't know if anybody else is interested, but I would love to have a meeting where we all shared some of our dashboards, not live, but like images or PDFs of a dashboard, and get comments from our entire group of, hey, this looks good, or hey, this looks crowded, or these colors are horrible. And because it's even with Excel, I have found that I will build an Excel spreadsheet and think that it's very intuitive and very easy to use. And it's actually, I've gone to where I'm basically just use tables in Excel, because I found that if I put too many formulas, too much fancy stuff, too many connected sheets, people are really intimidated and they're afraid they're going to break. So, and I certainly have plenty of bad examples that I can show people where you can see what not to do. And Caleb can probably show you lots of examples of what you can do well. But anybody else interested in having that type of show and tell, and maybe even send them out before the meeting, give people a chance to look at it and come back with ideas during the meeting? We'll go through them one by one and say, or even before and after. I have some workbooks where, I've tweaked and tweaked and tweaked, and I've wondered if my tweaks were really any improvement or if I should just, have thrown out the whole baby and started fresh.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'd be great. Our very first meeting we had for this Tableau user group, June of last year, I believe. We had some of those examples. Tammy, you shared some. Josh Green from another food bank shared as well. If you're in the Slack, there's a link to. There should be a link to that recording. Yes, there is. There is a link to that recording there. If not, I should be able to get that. So that'd be a great place to start. But yes, I think we should have that type of meeting to see, because we all speak the same language. We all essentially have the same data, right? The same type of data. And so seeing how other people build and design and use and the choices they make. Yeah, show and tell. That's great. And I can definitely bring some back. I keep my old ones because I'm like, for encouragement, like, hey, man, I'm doing better. Look at what I built, 6 months ago. And yes, the Slack community would be a great place to start sharing those. So publish one through Tableau Public. Yeah, so Tableau Public is a great option if you have data that's not too sensitive. You can publish it there, and we can use that to share as well. And then, okay, I think a couple of folks have asked about the Slack group. So let me go back to that slide. I was one off. Okay, so this is just a Slack group for the Tableau user group. Scan that QR code and you should let you in. I've seen a couple of folks come through already during this meeting, which is fantastic. Again, it's just a great way to stay in touch, ask questions. Yeah. Share your dog pictures, whatever. Just build a community is the goal here. So, all right, who wants some swag?
And wait, just one last thing.
Yep.
I'd encourage people to, and I'm going to try to do this, invite a coworker to our next Tableau food bank group.
Love it.
Because we're all doing this and creating it and familiar with Tab. But I think it would be really interesting to get some of our coworkers that, don't use Tableau or, aren't really comfortable with it and are confused, for them to be on the group. And it would also be a great idea, like in my personal, I'm not real good with Tableau. I use Tableau all the time, but I'm not real good with the software. So if I bring a coworker, they can see what you guys are doing, and then they can look at me and say, hey, Tammy, you need to learn how to do X because that's what I really want. So next meeting I don't know when it will be yet. I don't think it's scheduled yet, but it's going to be bring a coworker to the Tableau user group. Okay?
I love it. That's great. Cool. Let's wrap up with some swag giveaway. I think let's do 3 drawings. You have a really good chance of winning because there's 16 of us still here. So give me just a moment. And hopefully this all works like it's supposed to. Can everybody see that? The wheel of names. Can I get somebody to come off mute and tell me if they can see it? Looks like, okay, we can. Yes, great. All right, let's do our first giveaway. Give it a minute. All right, Blake. He was asking about Slack earlier. You joined Slack, so please send me a message. Get with me after this meeting so I can get shipping address for you. You can't win again. Sorry, Blake. I'm going to remove you, and let's do another one. How come my name's not on here? That's what I want to know. Tammy sent me this list, so maybe she took my name off. Amy. All right. Get with me after, either in Slack or email me. I will put my email in the chat right now, just in case. Yep.
Drum
So-
roll. Last one.
The last one. Tab. All right. Awesome. Or reach out to me in Slack just to make sure, and we'll get you your swag. Very cool. Thanks to Tableau for the swag, of course. And thank you everybody for being here. This was really, really great. We're right on time, so I really appreciate the engagement and the ideas. Keep them coming anytime. Feel free to email or send me a message in Slack. Thank you so much.
Thanks for organizing, Caleb. This is great. Have a good
Thank
day.
you. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. See you later.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tammy. That was awesome. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Bye-bye.
Bye.